Hey guys, welcome to the live stream. I'm Corentin, one of the publishing managers here at Voodoo. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks a lot to everyone who's joined. So the topic of today's live stream is a follow-up to last week's, where my friend Thomas did a really good job at presenting or answering all your questions that you had on trends, and also worked on or answered a few questions you had on the live chat, again related to trends or not. And so this live stream is a follow-up to last week's, and essentially I'm going to go through the questions that you sent us on the survey we sent you, and I'm going to go through the questions that you sent us about processes and guidelines, and then once I'm done with that, we'll have a quick break, and then we'll move on to the questions you guys have and that you've asked us on the live chat right now on YouTube. So if you have any questions, please feel free, ask them right now, and then I'll come back to them in the second part of this live stream. So, starting on the questions you had for us on our processes and our guidelines in making hit games. So the first question we had was from Volkan Kutlubey. Hi Volkan, I don't know if you're there yet, but hi anyway. So the question was, could you let us know what technical issues we will face once our game is accepted? Like Voodoo's own ads SDK implementation in Unity. So that question is in relation to once your game has been validated during our tests. So once you met our metrics on retention and on CPI, and we agree to publish the game together, we'll send you a single Unity package that we call the Voodoo source, and that contains all the ad SDKs that you have to integrate. So we've made it as easy as possible for you guys to integrate it. We have a comprehensive step-by-step guideline on how to integrate that. So it used to be very difficult back in the day, but we've got really good developers internally, and they've really simplified the entire process. So you just have to integrate one Unity package and you're good to go. So that really helps you guys speed up the process, and you can really get your game to the market to be published worldwide really quickly, especially compared to other publishers that take a bit more time. We're really proud of the fact that the whole process is super quick. So moving on to the next question, that's from Trafalgar Soft. Hey Trafalgar. So the question is, do you have specific guidelines that need to be met at least, in order to publish with you, such as art style, game style? Can it be a strategy game? So I'm sure you guys know Voodoo publishes ultra casual games. So we're in the ultra casual market. We're not really mid-core or hardcore games. We don't do that. We're not going to publish the next Fortnite. That's not us. That's not what we do. We're very happy where we are in the ultra casual market. So that's the type of games that you guys should be looking for. And in terms of specific metrics, so for retention specifically, what we ask for at a minimum at the moment is 55% retention on day one, and 22% retention on day 7. And you can see those metrics on your dashboard through Game Analytics. So that's the answer to that question. So, and specifically about the art style and game style, we don't want to impose specific guidelines. You guys are the masters of your art. You know what you're doing. You have the ideas, and we don't want to limit that creativity from you guys. So that's why we don't want to limit that. So again, you're free to do whatever you want, as long as it fits in the ultra casual market. So next question is from TIPD Productions. Would it be useful to see? It would be useful to see what kind of prototypes have been tested already and rejected, to avoid creating a similar one? That's an interesting one. It's difficult for us to do that simply because we don't want to limit, again, your creativity. You could very well try what we call a model and improve of a game with a similar gameplay, but you can add your own creation to it. You can innovate on that. And if we give you a list of gameplays that have already been tested, that will limit your imagination and your creativity, and we don't want to do that. Our role is to help you guys publish the next hit games, and we don't want to do anything that limits that possibility. So obviously, what you can look at is essentially take a step back and look at the greater trends as a whole. So, for instance, we think that trends like Baseball Boy and idle games, those are kind of getting tired at the moment. We think games in that specific genre are not going to be successful in the short to medium term. So if you take a general step back and if you look at sort of the gameplays that are around, not just our games, but other games out there on the market, on the top charts, if you look at those, then you can see what types of gameplays, what types of games, genres are being done. And you can try and think more in that terms rather than in specific gameplays that have been tested. So the next question is by WonderLogic. Hey man, can you show us the fundamental on how to analyze the graph from game analytics, especially the retention? Which graph we should take notes and how to study it? So WonderLogic, hi again. We've got a great video on our dashboard by Antonin, I think. I'm not sure who it was, sorry. But one of our publishing managers did a great video on how to read retention on game analytics, and it really goes through step by step what sort of criteria, what metrics you have to filter through the retention to have a good analysis of your retention. So I refer you back to the video in order not to repeat what's already out there on the dashboard. And then we've also got a question from North-Based. Hey man, do you have any recommendations for picking a name? I've never had that one before. I mean, yeah, keep it short and simple. Something that works well, that's catchy, but it's really not an important issue. It's what you should focus on is the pure gameplay. Focus on building a core gameplay that's really addictive, and the name will just it won't have that much impact on it. Don't worry. But whatever you have, as long as it's short, it's good. But again, don't spend a lot of time thinking and doing a list of names and seeing what works out. Like it's a waste of time, really. Focus. Go to the essential. Go really to what matters, and what matters is the core gameplay. That's it. So the next question we have is from Constructors Entertainment. Hey guys. So how many tries do we have after the initial launch? Do we have time to fix retention metrics, etc., or is it just one shot? And if it's not good, then that's it. So that's a question about iterations, and essentially that really depends on your initial numbers. If your retention at your first test is really close to our metrics, then sure, we definitely recommend that you try that again and iterate. If, however, you're really, really far away, or even say you're around the 30% mark on day one retention, we would suggest you to move on to the next idea, because bumping up a game from 30% to what we asked for at 55%, that's going to be really difficult, and you're going to spend a lot of time and resources working that and trying to improve that D1 retention. And honestly, you'll be much more effective on the long term if you focus on another prototype and if you build another project to the ground up. Also, on that note, something important to bear in mind is that when you request an iteration on our dashboard, you have to submit a new video. Otherwise, we can't send you the game analytics slots, and we just won't see your game on the dashboard. So I'll just repeat that. When you do an iteration on the dashboard, please send another video upload another video to the dashboard so that we actually see it. So the next question is from Vey Studios. Hey man. So the question is, if a game is just short of 200 or 250 daily users, does Voodoo still work with a developer? And is the core gameplay enough to attract users, or does a game need missions and challenges to maintain retention? First of all, if you have between 200 and 250 daily users, that's a pretty good shot for a prototype. That's actually pretty good. So you talk about challenges and missions. So those are, we would consider them as metagame features. So they don't actually affect the core gameplay. And during the testing phase, what we really want you guys to focus on is the core gameplay. That's the most important part of your game. It's not the sound, it's not the skins, it's not the unlockable stuff. Really, the biggest chunk, the most important part of your game in the ultra-casual market is the pure gameplay itself. If that's really, really good at the testing phase, then you've done a great job. And if we can publish the game just because you have got a really good core gameplay, then that's great. Challenges, missions, or all the metagame features, the sounds, etc., that will come afterwards once we actually launch the game. So during testing, focus on the core gameplay, and that's it. And then another question from Vey Studios. Does the developer have to promote the prototype, or does Voodoo take care of all the user acquisition? So Voodoo takes care of all the user acquisition. You don't need to do any work on that front. So we take care of that. That's why you integrate the Facebook analytics. It's for us to run the campaign for you, for your games. So we take care of that. So we had another question from Vector Monk. Hey guys. The question is, I'd like to know how to get feedback on completed retention tests. So we're currently working on an automated system where we'll give you guys detailed feedback on, depending on how your retention is, we'll give you detailed feedback on your game and how to improve your game, or if you need to move on to the next prototype to have a better chance of making a better prototype in the future. So it's something that doesn't exist yet, but it'll be available very soon, and we're working on it very hard right now. So bear with us, please. It'll be available shortly. So the next question is from Fernando. Hey guy. Hey man. What? The question is, how do I test my game through Android Studio or Eclipse? Fernando, well, unfortunately, we only test through iOS. That's something I think we've mentioned on our Tech FAQ, on our dashboard. We only test on iOS. For us, it's a reason of simplicity, and it's just a policy that we've chosen. So unfortunately, at the moment, you can't test your games or prototypes through those systems. I'm sorry about that. Another question you had, Fernando. What is it that you're looking for in a game, and what does game analytics tell us? That's an interesting question. What are we looking for in a game? What we're looking for in a game is an experience that's really satisfying and addictive. So something that's satisfying, think of, well, for me personally, our latest game, Hole.io. The very satisfying part in Hole.io is the moment where you have a number of buildings falling in the hole, and your hole gets bigger and bigger. And it's that first level of buildings, of those red brick buildings that fall in the hole. That's the really satisfying part of the game for me personally, and that's why I find the game really addictive. So it's that little nugget of satisfaction that we look for in games. So if you find that little that piece of satisfaction that you can gamify, that you can emulate in your own games, that's great. You've got a great game with you. So I think, guys, we'll take a quick break, and then I'll come back to your different questions about on the live chat. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in a bit. Hey guys, welcome back. So we're done with the first part of this live stream, and I'm now going to move on to answering some of the questions you guys asked us on the live chat. So the first question we had today was from Guru. Hey man, welcome to the stream. So the question is, how are you paying the developers that games get published? Approximately, how big the payments per month? Are the payments happening all the time while a game is published? And can it be 2, 3, 4 years? So the arrangement we have with the studios is quite different from the rest of the market. A lot of publishers in the rest of the market have a traditional rev share agreement. I can't go into too much detail about what we have, but we're quite different in that what we offer compared to a lot of the others is a fixed term payment contract. And the big advantage of that compared to the other publishers is that it gives you a lot of security and visibility in the future. So that's really something that all our studios really like because it gives that visibility and security in the future. So the other question we've had from Marcus Dobler. Why all preview videos have to be landscape? Wouldn't it make more sense to make portrait games in Portrait, Facebook, and Instagram support those formats? I'm not really sure I understand the question. Your videos can be landscape or portrait. It all depends on your game. If your game is a landscape game, obviously your video on Facebook will be in landscape. If it's in portrait, it'll be in portrait. So the video that we use on Facebook, what comes from you in the first place, and that depends on your game, whether it's landscape or portrait. So the next question is from Ayush Singla. Hey man, when you get a new game video and if it's a good prototype, do you think that it can do great on the App Store and then start ad testing, or you just start testing? So when we see a good prototype, when you send us your prototypes, the first thing we do is we start testing the market. We do essentially a soft launch testing phase in the market. And then we read metrics, we analyze the data from your game. So that's why you have to integrate the game analytics and Facebook SDKs so that we can read the data on your game. And through that, we'll be able to tell you whether or not we'll be able to publish your game, if it's a success or not. So the next question is from Gecko Games. Hey guys. Do you recommend to make iterations of the game which has more than 100 users per day but less than 150? I think that is quite relatively low. So that means that your CPI is relatively high. And in that situation, we would rather suggest to you guys to move on to another prototype and create a new idea. Again, I think I said that a bit earlier on this live stream. The amount of work and effort and time you're going to spend on improving a game that has between 100 and 150 users, that will produce lower or less results than the time and effort that you will use in creating a new idea where you potentially have a great idea and you have many more users and you'll have a hit. So our suggestion is that you move on to the next prototype if you have that kind of users, new users per day. Another question from Guru. How big does the retention results have to be, D1, D7? So D1 has to be at 55% on 55% retention, and D7 has to be at 22% retention. A question from Cyberpunch Studios. The biggest question that you have apparently, in our FAQ, we give a very vague answer on retention and download numbers needed to get published. What do those numbers look like, and what should we be aiming for? So I just answered your question with regards to retention. So 55% on D1, 22% on day 7. In terms of numbers of downloads, so that's related to the CPI of your game. So the more users you have per day, the better. Obviously, that means you have a very low CPI. If you have around 100, anywhere between 100 or 200 or anywhere lower than 200 people per day, that means that your CPI is above average. So that'll be more difficult for us to publish, and we'll have to have a think about that. But generally speaking, if you're below 200 users per day, you would have to think to start a new prototype. Another question from, or a question from Banika Georgian Vasilihei. Sorry about that. Hi, man. Hey, Voodoo team, is iOS mandatory or can I start with Android? Yes, I think I mentioned that earlier. We work with iOS initially. So unfortunately, you can't test out your games with us on Android. Another question from Henry Fami. Hey, man. The integrated game will be published under your name or my name. So in the event that, so we test your game, it's got great metrics, and we publish together, we have the splash screen where we have our name and your name. So you can look at all the other games, we've already published in the past. You always see Voodoo and then the name of the studio. If you see some of our games with just our name, so just Voodoo, that means that's one of the games that we developed in-house internally with our own developers. So a question from Road to Vegan. Hey man, and yeah, Road to Vegan, yeah, an interesting name. Hi there, we noticed on Sensor Tower that Voodoo has some inactive games. Do you disable a game when it doesn't perform well? What impact does this have on the agreement with the studio? Thanks. So if you see inactive games on Sensor Tower, that reflects a situation that we had a few months back, where testing was done through our account. At the moment, you're all aware of this, that testing is done through your account. So that's why we have a number of inactive games on Sensor Tower. It's not a reflection of what happened to us. It's just that we used to test through our own account, but we don't do this anymore. So yeah, that's why I have a number of inactive games. A question from Akilesvar AVR. Hey man, what's your expected downloads per day during the testing phase, and what's the current D137 retention values? Well, I think I've already sort of answered that. So again, just to repeat, D155, D722. If you're below 200 users, new users per day, it's going to be difficult. A question. So a question from Yogi C. When you launch an ad campaign, is it shown to all people or specific demographic, 14 to 40 years old, females, iOS only? So when we launch the campaign on Facebook, we rely on Facebook's algorithm, and we have a broad reach. So that means initially, when the campaign starts, Facebook is going to target a wide section of the population. So it's going to start from 13-year-olds to grandparents and 75-year-olds. Men, women, the campaign is ran in the US only, because that's our biggest market. We need to know if people in the US are going to like your game, so that's why we run the campaign in the US. And yes, it's only on iOS, because we only test on iOS initially. But then Facebook's Facebook's algorithm is going to tailor the campaign based on the user profile. So if your game, for instance, appears to work well with women more than with men, if your game is very female-oriented, Facebook will target more females than males. So the campaign evolves all the time. It's always changing, and it always adapts. And then another question for Yogi, from Yogi C. Endless or level-based with upgrades? We tend to see very few endless games at the moment that are performing really well. Most of the if you look at the top charts, or even the top 50 on App Annie or on the app stores, very few games are pure endless. A lot of games have a level-based system, and the reason we see, at least, behind that is that a level-based compared to an endless really gives the players a sense of progression. And that sense of progression is very satisfying. It's at a subconscious level, being able to progress in a game is something very rewarding and satisfying to people, and that's really helpful for us in terms of long-term retention. So it really helps for D7 to have a level-based system. Another question from Vector Monk. We've seen you before, right, Vector Monk? Yeah, I think we had a question from you before. Is it okay to use push notifications in the prototypes? No, generally you shouldn't have that in your prototypes. What you want to have as a prototype is a clean prototype, so no ads, no leaderboards, don't bother with that. What we're focusing on, what we're really testing during the testing phase is the gameplay. That's all that matters. That's what we need to know. That's what you need to know in order to know if you have a hit game or not. To look at the data, we're only looking at the pure gameplay. That's it. So again, focus on building the core skeleton gameplay. That's the most important part, and don't worry about the rest. Another question from Yogi. I made a simple game, but then I got many more ideas about modes, power-up, boosters. Should I add those and increase chances of users liking it, or just keep scope low? So it's great that you have lots of ideas for all those features, but again, those ideas are all relate to metagame features. And again, those features, they're good features, they do help retention, but we use those features once we publish the game, not during the testing phase. And again, the reason for that we use those features during testing is because we focus on the core gameplay. We want to know that the core gameplay on its own, the core skeleton gameplay, is really good and satisfying and addictive enough. That's what we're really looking for. So it's great that you have ideas about modes and power-ups and new levels, but you should try and focus that creativity and move it more towards game ideas, gameplay ideas. I know it's easy to say and hard to do, but yeah, that's really what I would encourage you to do, is focus your creativity on creating gameplay ideas, the core skeleton. Yogi, another question from you. Good to have you with us, man. Oh, sorry, no, that was it. That was your last question. My bad. Next question is from Hideout Games. Hi, man. Do you guys make sure that the latest video is used for the ad campaign? If I submit a video a day before requesting testing, will that video definitely be used? Yes, the video we use for the Facebook campaign is the last video you guys upload to the dashboard. So you can upload as many as you want. If you think you've made an error on a previous video and you want to change that, there's no problem. You can upload a new one. We're going to testing. Is it automatically by adding a new game to the dashboard? No, the whole process is a bit more complicated than that. So the first step, well, you'll see from the dashboard, it's very intuitive, but essentially you submit a first gameplay video to us, which we will accept or decline, because whether or not it follows our guidelines on the videos. Then you have to integrate game analytics and the Facebook SDK, and then you request testing. So those are the big picture, those are the steps that you have to follow to submit a game for testing with us. We have another question from Adelkan Kokanavi. After what time... Sorry about that, guys. After what time will the publication be if the game passed the test? So if your game passed the test, then, well, first of all, congrats, that's great. We'll get in touch with you really, really quickly, and it'll be a matter for you guys to integrate the Voodoo source, which is super quick. It generally takes maybe 4 or 5 days maximum, and then we publish very, very quickly after that. So the whole process from submitting a first prototype to testing it, reading the data from the tests, and integrating our Voodoo source SDK to launching, all that can be done in under 20 days, no problem at all. I think that's it, guys, for us. We don't have any more time for other questions, unfortunately. It was really, really good having you. I really enjoyed being here with you guys and answering your questions. So just to let you know what's coming for the future, I think, well, you guys seem to like those sessions. A lot of you come very regularly to these live streams. So what we're going to set up for next week, starting next week, is a live stream every week at the same time, every day, each week. So you guys can drop in whenever you want. It'll be a live chat, Q&A, and you can ask us any questions you like. It'll either be me, Thomas, Antonin, or Hugo, or any other of the publishing managers. We'll each take turns, we'll be here together, or we'll be here for you to answer any questions you guys would have with us. So again, it'll be the same time every day. We'll let you know in an email how that works. But yeah, so it was great to be with you guys. Thanks a lot for listening and for joining us. Thanks, guys. Bye.